Hey everyone, welcome back to Love Wins, where the truth matters because it's the truth that sets us free. Just a couple quick comments about this series. If you go back and look at the explosion of comments on this last video and quite a few on the one before, you will see that the topic of Jesus is the most inflammatory topic that one could discuss, which seems odd, but really it's not, because Satan knows that if we find Jesus, he loses all of his power, all of his influence, and we are safe. So it's no mystery that talking about Jesus elicits quite a response. Now, there were two types of responses. One was Christians who obviously read the title, reacted, never watched the video. Please, if you're a human being, learn to listen and then decide if you need to react. There is way too much of us reacting without listening. The second group of people was those who attacked the divinity of Jesus, and I'm not going to get into that today, but that is a subject that gets attacked wildly within and without Christianity. Again, because if we found out who Jesus really is, it's a game changer. So today we're back in Matthew chapter 1. We're continuing in the genealogy of Jesus. It's that section at the very beginning of Matthew that would be so easy to skip over. Matthew doesn't skip over it. And Matthew doesn't skip over it because Matthew was a tax collector, and Matthew knew exactly what it was like to be an outsider and to be viewed by the world as somebody who didn't count and who had no hope. And Matthew wanted us to know before Jesus ever comes on the scene, before he even discusses his birth or the circumstances leading up to his birth, that the family tree of Jesus is inclusive. Very inclusive. Now, the subject we're going to talk about today is more touchy than the others, even though the last one elicited a lot of response. So Tamar was not an Israelite, and it was an incestuous, crazy circumstance by which her and Judah had a baby, twins actually. And then Rahab comes into the story, and she's a prostitute in Jericho. And then Ruth comes into the story, and she's a Moabite, and those people were the children of incest with Lot and his daughters. We're not even going to get into that story in any depth. I have a radio program called Fresh Angle. If you want to go on www.freshangle.ca, you can hear a series of podcasts on Ruth. Amazing story. Today we're going to get into David and Bathsheba. And Matthew simply says that David had a son named Solomon whose mother was Bathsheba. And he doesn't go into any detail. He doesn't need to, because he has a Jewish audience who well knows the circumstances. And here's the irony. The Jews saw David as a hero, and they could see him that way and chose to see him that way by ignoring some very dark chapters in David's experience. And don't we all tend to do that? We have people that we don't like, and we villainize every bad thing they do and minimize every good thing they do. And then we have people that we do like, and we minimize every bad thing they do and accentuate every positive thing they do. But the Bible's not like that. And Jesus is not like that. The Bible tells the story. Good, bad, ugly. And Jesus comes on the scene saying, "This is my family. These are the people through whom I came." So you have Judah frequenting prostitutes, ending up impregnating his daughter-in-law that he should have given to his son but wouldn't. Then you have Rahab, a prostitute in Jericho who heard about the amazing things God was doing for Israel and wanted to be part of it. Asked if her family could be saved, was told that if she hung a scarlet thread a cord from her window, that her and anyone who was in her home would be saved. And then there's Ruth and Boaz, which we're not going to get into in this series. And then we come to David and Bathsheba. Many people tell the story or understand the story. I shouldn't say tell the story. We don't get to tell the story. We get to read the story. But many people understand the story this way, that Bathsheba was bathing on her roof, and David saw her and was attracted to her, so he sent for her, and they had consensual affair, And then she found out she was pregnant, so she told David. And then David panicked and didn't know what to do, so he sent a message to the front lines to bring Uriah home, hoping that he would sleep with his wife while he was home, and then they would assume the child was his, and life would go on. Well, Uriah, loyal, didn't do that. And when he went back to the front lines, David actually sent him back with his own death letter, a message to give to the commander of the army, and the commander of the army was instructed to put Uriah where the fighting was the worst and pull back and ensure that he was killed in the fighting. Murder. Creative murder. Murder from a distance. Still murder. As if all that wasn't bad enough. Here's the reality of it. David was the king. Bathsheba was a subject in his kingdom. Her bathing on her roof or wherever she was bathing, matter of interpretation, was not a strange act. It wasn't an act of seduction. And when David sent for her, she didn't have a say in whether or not she came. He was the king. He could do and have whatever he wanted. Did he rape Bathsheba? We're not in the room. We don't know what happened. Was she consenting to it? We weren't in the room. We don't know what happened. But it's more likely that she was an unwilling participant than a willing one. So not only did David kill her husband, but he forced her to be his object of lust. King David. Mighty King David. When the Messiah was to come, they wanted a new king like King David. You see, they weren't even expecting anyone other than a human. And they probably didn't even really care if he was perfect in any biblical sense of the word. They just wanted someone who would run amok, put down the other nations, free them from the Roman power, put them back in their position, and make them the best nation in the world. That story of David and Bathsheba is one of the darkest stories, and there are many dark stories. But when you consider who David was, and the position that he occupied, and the favor that he had with the people, and the blessing that he was in many other ways, and then you consider the fallout within his own family from his choices and his actions, which was disgusting and tragic. It is indeed a dark moment in Jewish history. And Jesus could have had Matthew keep Bathsheba's name out of it to not invoke that memory. But just like Tamar, just like Rahab, just like Ruth, Jesus instructed Matthew, put her name down. I want people to remember. Because Jesus was coming to seek and save the lost. He frankly said, those who are well don't need a doctor. It's not why I came. I came to seek and to save. When Nicodemus, the teacher of Israel, came, trying to figure out who Jesus was and what he was about, Jesus said to him, I didn't come to condemn you. You're condemned already. Look at your history. Look at humanity. Look at the trajectory that you're on. If I didn't come to rescue you from the inevitable results of the choices that Adam and Eve started and that humanity has perpetuated, there is no hope for you. And I didn't come for some of you. I certainly didn't just come for the Jews. Look at my history. Look at your history. Look at the genealogy. Trace it down through. Tell me that there's a pure Jewish nation. Abraham was a Syrian. His son was Syrian. Jacob was Syrian. His name was changed to Israel by God. And his descendants are a mixed bag of believers and unbelievers, people who embraced God, people who rejected God, people who, in following God, failed and did terrible, miserable things. And all the way through, from there on, people came into the genealogy who were not Jewish, Israelite in any sense of the word. But they're there. And those bloodlines intertwined, and they went all the way to Jesus. And Jesus was born of Mary. And there's lots of controversy around that. And we will get into that in our next episode. But for this episode, whoever you are, whether you're Christian, not Christian, whether you've not even lasted this long into the video or you're just looking for something to nitpick, whoever you are, I hope you're still here, because I hope you clicked on this not to find fault, but to learn something. We all have things to learn, no matter what religion we belong to, what background we came from, what genealogy or family tree. God is not a God of some of us. He's a God of all of us. So no matter how we identify historically or currently, we're all his children. We're all his creation, which means we're all brothers and sisters. And to attack each other, to tear each other down, it's not the Spirit of God that does that. Jesus opened up his family tree to the world. He put it down in writing and preserved it for all of this time so that we can read it, so that we can go back to those people and look at their stories and say, what can I learn from this? David, I believe, will be in the kingdom. But he won't be there because he was a good man all the time. There's a verse in the Old Testament that says, God says that David had a heart like his. If you understand that verse properly, what God was saying is that David has a heart after mine. In other words, David is pursuing me. The difference between David and other kings of Israel and Judah is not that he was better than them. Some will be in the kingdom, some will not be in the kingdom. Some that were far worse than David will also be in the kingdom. Some that didn't do anything as bad as what David did that we know of will not be in the kingdom. Because being in the kingdom, which starts here and now, isn't about what we have done, are doing, or will do from a behavior point of view. You see, as shameful as what David did, awful, there's no words to describe it. When the prophet of God confronted Nathan, told him a story about a rich man and a poor man and a lamb. And David realized that he was the rich man who stole the one sheep from the poor man and then killed him. David could have had Nathan killed. He could have kept on killing to preserve his innocence. But David didn't do that. David fessed up to what he did. He faced it. And then he went to God, seeking forgiveness. Those are the people who will be in the kingdom. Because they desire to be like Jesus. They desire to live in a place of peace and love and harmony. And broken as we are, and we will do stupid things and evil things. But we're either grabbing onto Jesus and holding on to Jesus and heading towards Jesus and desiring to be like Jesus more and more. Or we're killing other people and holding on to our opinions and our views and being mean and vindictive and saying, I'm innocent and you're guilty. You're the problem, I'm not. Jesus came to expose us and then extend his arm and say, you don't have to stay in this mess. I came to seek and save the lost. We'll see you next time.